How about you, Deputy? Is that gun just for show? Or do you get to shoot people once in a while?
When news first broke that legendary actor Gene Hackman had passed away, fans around the world were heartbroken. The Hollywood community lost one of its greatest storytellers, a man who brought powerful characters to life with honesty and intensity. But what happened after his death left many shocked and confused. For decades, Hackman had chosen to live far away from the cameras, enjoying a peaceful retirement in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He had stopped acting years ago, preferring to write novels and live quietly with his wife, Betsy Arakawa. But after both of them were found dead in their home, investigators uncovered details that painted a far more tragic picture than anyone expected. What appeared to be a natural death turned into a story filled with unanswered questions, a story of illness, isolation, and a family's desperate fight for privacy. As the world mourned a movie legend, those closest to him were forced to face secrets they had worked hard to keep hidden. Before tragedy struck, Gene Hackman's journey was one of determination and triumph. Born on January 30, 1930 in San Bernardino, California, he grew up during the Great Depression. From a young age, he dreamed of acting, but success did not come easily. In his early years, Hackman joined the U.S. Marine Corps, and after his service, he trained at the Pasadena Playhouse. There, his teachers famously told him he would never make it in Hollywood. Alongside his friends Dustin Hoffman and Robert Duvall, Hackman was labeled least likely to succeed. But that insult only pushed him harder. He moved to New York, worked odd jobs, and took small acting roles wherever he could find them. His big break came with the 1967 film Bonnie and Clyde, where he played Buck Barrow. That role earned him his first Oscar nomination and launched a career that would span more than 4 decades. Gene Hackman was not just a star. He was a force. An actor who could make even the simplest character feel alive and real. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Hackman became one of the most respected actors in Hollywood. His performance as Detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle in The French Connection earned him an Academy Award for Best Actor, proving his unmatched ability to capture both power and vulnerability. In that film, he was gritty, unpredictable, and deeply human, traits that would define his entire career. From thrillers like The Conversation to heroic roles in Hoosiers, and from villainous turns like Lex Luthor in the Superman films to the thoughtful sheriff in Unforgiven, Hackman showed incredible range. He could be tough, funny, emotional, or terrifying, often all at once. Directors loved him for his intensity, and audiences admired him for his realism. Unlike many Hollywood stars, Hackman never played himself. Every character felt new, lived in, and unpredictable. That raw honesty made him one of the last great everyman actors. Someone who didn't look or act like a movie star, but who became unforgettable every time the camera rolled. By the early 2000s, Hackman had achieved everything an actor could dream of. 2 Oscars, 5 nominations, and universal respect. But even as his career thrived, his health began to decline. During a routine checkup, doctors warned him about heart problems and advised him to slow down. After filming the comedy Welcome to Mooseport in 2004, he quietly announced his retirement from acting. Fans were surprised, but Hackman insisted he had no regrets. "I've done enough," he said in one interview. "Now I want to live." He shifted his focus to writing, publishing several novels that showed another side of his creativity. Away from the spotlight, he lived peacefully with Betsy Arakawa, a classical pianist he had married after his first marriage ended. Together, they built a beautiful home in Santa Fe, a retreat surrounded by mountains and open skies. For many years, neighbors described them as quiet but kind, living a simple life filled with books, music, and morning walks. To outsiders, it seemed like a perfect ending to a long, successful career. Behind that peaceful image, however, life for Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa was becoming increasingly difficult. As Hackman grew older, his health problems worsened. He had previously undergone angioplasty, and reports later revealed that he had also developed Alzheimer's disease. Those close to him said the once sharp and confident actor had begun to struggle with memory loss and confusion. Betsy became his full-time caregiver, rarely leaving his side. The couple stopped attending public events and declined interviews. Friends who tried to reach out said they often couldn't get through. Hackman's family, especially his children from his first marriage, respected his wish for privacy, but worried about his isolation. In his later years, he was rarely seen outside. Even fans who spotted him on rare occasions said he looked fragile but content, often riding his bike or shopping quietly in town. No one could have guessed that inside their beautiful Santa Fe home, a heartbreaking tragedy was about to unfold. In February 2025, 7 months before the news broke, something went terribly wrong. According to reports from investigators, Betsy Arakawa called her doctor to report feeling unwell, complaining of severe respiratory symptoms. She made an appointment but never arrived. A few days later, maintenance workers noticed that neither Betsy nor Gene had been seen for nearly a week. When they knocked on the door and received no answer, they alerted security officers, who looked through a window and made a chilling discovery. Inside the home, they found both Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa dead. Initial reports suggested possible foul play, but investigators soon ruled that out. Betsy had died from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, a rare disease spread by rodents in the Southwest. Gene, already suffering from Alzheimer's and heart disease, was unable to seek help or even understand what had happened. He reportedly died a week later from heart failure, alone beside his wife. The heartbreaking scene shocked everyone who knew them. Two people who had shared their lives in peace, gone within days of each other. The days following the discovery were chaotic. Local authorities sealed off the property and launched a full investigation. At first, rumors of carbon monoxide poisoning spread across social media, but these were quickly dismissed after the coroner's report confirmed natural causes. Even so, the story attracted intense media attention. Reporters gathered outside the gated community, and photos of the mansion began circulating online. But Gene Hackman's children quickly stepped in to protect their parents' privacy. They filed legal motions to block the release of photos, body cam footage, and investigative materials. The family explained that Gene and Betsy had lived quietly for years and deserved to be remembered with dignity. Their lawyer issued a statement asking the public to respect the couple's legacy and not turn their final days into a spectacle. The situation became even more complicated when lawyers discovered differences in their wills. Betsy's will stated that if she and Gene died within 90 days of each other, their estate would be donated to charity. Gene's older will, however, named Betsy as his only heir. The court case that followed was emotional and complex, with the family working to honor both parents' wishes while keeping details out of the public eye. To understand why this story touched so many hearts, one must look at who Gene Hackman truly was. Unlike many Hollywood icons, he was never flashy or overly polished. He didn't care about fame or image. He cared about the work. Hackman approached acting like a craft, treating every character as a real person with emotions, flaws, and fears. His performances in films like Mississippi Burning, The Firm, and Crimson Tide showed his ability to play men under pressure, torn between duty and morality. Off-screen, he was humble and private. Friends described him as funny, thoughtful, and surprisingly shy. He enjoyed fishing, cycling, and building homes, literally designing and helping construct more than 10 properties. He also had a deep love for sports and often attended Jacksonville Jaguars games with his longtime friend, Coach Jack Del Rio. Even after leaving acting, he continued to narrate documentaries, lending his powerful voice to projects about the military and history. In every way, Hackman lived as a man of purpose, one who found meaning in hard work, love, and creativity. While Gene Hackman's career brought him worldwide fame, his personal life was filled with both joy and regret. He often spoke about the challenges of balancing Hollywood fame with being a father. His first marriage to Faye Maltese lasted 30 years and produced 3 children, Christopher, Elizabeth, and Leslie. But his long hours on set meant he was often away from home. Later in life, he admitted he wished he had spent more time with his family. Behind Gene Hackman's unmatched performances was a man who struggled deeply with the pressures of fame and the weight of his own perfectionism. He was not an actor who took things lightly. Every role, every scene, every line mattered to him more than anyone could imagine. Hackman was known to push himself beyond limits to capture raw emotion. On set, he was serious, sometimes intimidating, but that's what made him great. His colleagues often said that working with Gene was like being in a masterclass. He never played a character. He became one. But that level of intensity came at a price. Hackman was never one to enjoy the spotlight outside of work. He disliked interviews and avoided Hollywood parties. While many of his peers thrived on fame, Hackman found it exhausting and often meaningless. After finishing a film, he would retreat quietly, sometimes going months without contact with anyone from the industry. Those who knew him well said he was a private soul who guarded his peace fiercely. His search for calm eventually led him away from Los Angeles, away from cameras, flashing lights, and endless interviews. As he aged, the perfectionist inside him began to question whether the magic of acting was still worth the physical and emotional toll. The late nights, the pressure to perform, and the endless cycle of publicity wore him down. When Hackman finally decided to retire, he didn't make a grand announcement or give a farewell interview. He simply walked away. That quiet exit said everything about the man he was: strong, self-aware, and unwilling to let fame define his final act. After retirement, Gene Hackman settled into a life that could not have been more different from Hollywood. He moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, a place known for its peace, wide-open skies, and artistic beauty. There, he lived with his wife, Betsy Arakawa, far from the glamour and gossip of the industry. For Hackman, Santa Fe became a sanctuary. He could walk the streets, ride his bike, and go unnoticed. Something impossible in Los Angeles or New York. In interviews before he completely disappeared from the public eye, Hackman said he found happiness in simple things: designing homes, writing novels, and spending time in nature. Architecture fascinated him because it was another form of storytelling. Only this time, through space and structure rather than words and emotions. Writing also allowed him to express feelings he once poured into his characters. His novels, while not as famous as his films, revealed a thoughtful and sensitive side of him that many never saw on screen. His wife Betsy stood by him through it all. She was his rock, his companion, and the person who understood his need for solitude. Together they built a quiet life filled with love and balance. Friends who visited described Hackman's home as modest, yet beautiful, a reflection of his taste and personality. It was filled with books, art, and mementos from his long career. Yet there were no trophies displayed in sight. To him, success was not something to show off. It was something to be thankful for and then move beyond. However, even in peace, Hackman's life was not without pain. As years went by, health challenges began to appear. Though he rarely spoke about it, those close to him noticed he became frailer and slower in public. He was spotted occasionally at local cafes or grocery stores, looking thin but still carrying himself with quiet dignity. Fans who recognized him were often surprised by how humble he remained. No bodyguards, no attitude, just a kind smile and a soft word. There were whispers that Hackman suffered from heart-related issues and other age-related ailments. Yet, true to his nature, he refused to make his struggles public. He never wanted sympathy. What mattered to him was maintaining control over his own story. He had spent his life giving everything to his craft, and now he wanted to keep what little privacy he had left. During this time, Betsy's health also began to decline. The couple, once full of vitality and love, found themselves facing the cruel reality of aging together. Their home, once filled with laughter, became quieter. Visitors said Hackman often spent hours sitting outside, staring at the horizon in silence. Perhaps he was remembering the roles, the fame, the people he met, or maybe he was simply grateful for the peace he had finally found. Despite the sadness of those years, Hackman's resilience remained unbroken. Even in illness, he carried the same strength that once powered his unforgettable performances. He faced life the way he faced his characters, with honesty and courage. Then came the day that fans had feared for years. News spread across the internet claiming that Gene Hackman had passed away quietly in his Santa Fe home. At first, many thought it was just another online hoax, the kind that often targets reclusive stars. But as hours passed, tributes began pouring in from fans, co-stars, and directors who worked with him. Whether or not the news was confirmed immediately didn't seem to matter. The world reacted as though it had lost one of its greatest performers. Social media was flooded with memories and emotional posts. Clips from The French Connection, Hoosiers, Unforgiven, and the Royal Tenenbaums circulated everywhere. Younger audiences who had never seen Hackman's movies suddenly discovered the depth of his talent. Old fans shared stories of how his performances had inspired them. The reaction proved just how deeply his work had touched people around the world. What made it even more emotional was that Hackman himself had predicted this kind of response. In one of his rare interviews, he once said, "When I go, I just hope people remember the work. Not the gossip, not the awards, just the work." That's exactly what happened. The world remembered his art, his humanity, and the honesty he brought to every role. The silence that followed his supposed passing was haunting. For years, Hackman had chosen to live away from the spotlight. But this final silence felt different. It felt permanent. For those who admired him, it was as though a powerful, quiet light had gone out in Hollywood. Even though he stepped away from acting decades ago, Gene Hackman's legacy has only grown stronger with time. Film students still study his performances to understand emotional realism. Directors reference his work when teaching young actors how to convey depth without words. Modern actors, from Christian Bale to Bryan Cranston, have publicly said that Hackman influenced their approach to acting. His characters were never just characters. They were reflections of real human emotion. From the furious detective Popeye Doyle to the broken coach in Hoosiers, Hackman showed audiences that heroes could be flawed and